it was really demotivating because, I'd buy a journal, like a life planning journal, and I'd use it for a little while. I'm like, this is working. Then I put it down. So it's like, at the end of it, I'm not left with, wow, that was really helpful for 2 weeks. At the end of it, I'm left with, hey, I guess you were right. You just aren't able to stick to things, right? It's that this is just who you are. You've done it again. You've put down the thing that you said you would pick up. But now that I'm learning much more about myself and about the condition of my existence, I feel much more at peace with saying, this tool is working for me right now. So let's like milk it for all it's worth. And if I put it down, that's totally okay, because it'll be waiting for me when I'm ready to pick it up again, or some other thing will take its place or be ready for me. I don't need to just assume that 3/3 of the time I'll be in my to-do list. 3/3 of the time I'll be off my phone after 9. Because that's like the expectations were just set too high. And they're self-imposed expectations. Levi, can you hear me?
Yeah. I just was ignoring you.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Hey, friend, welcome to the Make Stuff Club. Oh, no.
Welcome to the Mock Stop Club.
I can't even get that far. Hey, friend, welcome to the Make Stuff Club, the show for dysfunctional creatives, where the goal is simple: make good stuff, make some money, and as much as possible, avoid self-sabotaging your work, your relationships, and your life in the process.
Levi, has the line always been make good stuff?
Yeah, the line has always been make good stuff.
Oh. I feel like I've lowered my bar to just make stuff.
Oh, I thought you were disappointed that it wasn't like make great stuff. You're now dropping it down.
No, now I just need to be like, hey, anything, literally anything. Because I mean, I don't know if you felt this at all, but my bar for what good is, I keep elevating that bar. And I don't mean by like the things I do, but like my mental, what I think is good, my taste keeps getting higher, but faster than my abilities do. So it's a terrible place to be, because it feels like for me to reach good is harder by the day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I just want to make stuff and make some money.
Hey friend, this is Levi from the future talking to you now, and I want to interject quickly in this episode to set some groundwork. The episode that you're going to be listening to is actually one from the past, and there's some exciting developments that have happened that I think you might be interested in. And development number 1, we are now recording this in video. So if you're the kind of person who likes watching faces talk, or if you like little highlight bite-sized nuggets on your YouTube homepage, I highly recommend heading over to YouTube, type Make Stuff Club into the search bar, and give us that old subscribe. And the second thing is that this podcast episode you're going to listen to was actually recorded many moons ago, before my son Jasper was born. We recorded a lot of conversations we didn't release, and we are going to be finally catching up to real time and doing some more up-to-date podcast episodes. So this is an episode that felt quite personal and also timely, as I'm thinking through some of the same things that we were talking about in this episode. So it's almost like an episode that Jesse and I made for ourselves, which was kind of the goal of this whole thing in the first place. And we're going to continue to do that. So thank you for letting me give you some brief context on this episode, and let's get back to playing it. You know, when there's just so many things that we need to address and talk about, your brain's just like not entirely sure which one to do first.
Yes.
I think, okay. So at the very top, let's give the little tease. My wife is currently 6 days overdue.
Yep.
With my second child.
At any moment, you might just be like, gotta go, and run out the door.
But I'm like, this time around, obviously the amount that I have on my shoulders is just so minimal, but I feel like there's literally nothing for me to practically do at this point, because I'm just like, there's so little that I actually get to do in being there as a supporting person through the process of delivery anyways. But even in the like hours leading, I thought it was going to be like counting down the hours, but now like days keep going by.
Yeah.
This is unfamiliar territory for us.
I mean,
It's
and
great.
particularly when you have, great midwives and stuff helping you out, it's like anything that you could do, they can do better.
That's
So
exactly it.
is that why you called me? You're like, hey, we should record a podcast. I have nothing to do and no one to help.
No, that's exactly it. It's literally at this point, I had a project where I was like, yeah, I finished it about a week ago, and I was feeling frantic because we were coming up on the due date, and I was thinking, okay, this project is like the last thing I'll be doing, and then I finished it, and that felt incredible, and then now it's just waiting.
Yeah. I know exactly that feeling. How you been? It's been a while.
It has been. I've been actually doing really well.
Nice. I'm really happy to hear that.
Especially in light of it. I mean, I was saying to Janelle the other day, this maybe sounds a little dark, but it's reality. It's like I'm excited to be alive.
Oh, yeah, dude, that's awesome.
Where like waking up and doing a day that, okay, I'll put it this way. Out of the days in a week, it's now it's now maybe like 1 or 2 out of 7 where I'm waiting for the day to be over. Mm. And this is not in light of like the last 5-6 days as we are just on the edge of our seats waiting for our son to be born. That's like a special case scenario.
Sure, but overall,
especially in the last month and a half, because you know that feeling, right? Where you wake up at the start of the day and it's almost as if like, okay, I just need to make it till this day is done. So that way I can go to bed. Mm-hmm. And then the typical cycle of whatever headspace you end up getting in by the end of a day like that, where by the end of the day, you're just numbing yourself with noise of either watching, consuming content on the phone way too much. And then so you accidentally end up staying up too late into the evening. And then you had been in this headspace of, oh, if only if I can get just one night of sleep, then I'll be good to go for the next day. And then the next day after a good night of sleep will be fine. But then every night you self-sabotage it by staying up too late.
Yep. I did that consistently for several months. And I know you and I were talking earlier, but we forgot to hit record. And by forgot, I mean, it was just a FaceTime call. You don't record those. So I've been taking notes and making a to-do list lately, and we can talk about that later. But one of the things that I've been putting pretty much every day is just no phone after 9. And it's so silly. Like, I didn't invent this. I didn't come up with this. In fact, I've been fighting against everybody who tells me that I should do that for years, right? Yeah. Is disconnect from screens and you'll sleep better. And the reason that I've been fighting it is partly because I've always struggled with sleep. So I just kind of assumed like that probably doesn't affect me the same way. And also I just don't want to, right? Left to my own devices in the moment, I'll watch TikTok till 2 a.m. every night. And that's a terrible way to live your life. In the moment, goodness me, it feels so good. You laugh so much, you learn so much, fantastically. However, in the past, only really like a week and a bit of cutting out phones is the main thing. Almost every night, it's been all forms of media, like TVs, iPads, laptops, no work, that kind of thing. My only real exception is like if my wife and I plan, we're going to watch a movie or something. We're watching Dave season 2, episode 1 tonight. So that's one of the exceptions. But I can't tell you how much better it has made my transition into sleep. It's so much better that I'm angry about it, because what a stupid thing to so drastically change my sleep, which has been actually changing my life. So
yeah, what's that Netflix doc, Social Dilemma? Is that what that's the name of it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't watch it for the longest time because I was like, I feel like I'm more literate on the ways that advertising and marketing and behave and tracking people for advertising. I feel like I'm, as far as like the average person in North America, I feel like I'm already a notch or two above that because, I've worked with
We've been listening to Reply All.
Yeah. Okay. You called me out there. Yes. It's just reply all. But like, no, I've been in like situations like in a different country sitting next to someone and they get an ad for something that a company is helping me sell
Yeah.
because they're running targeted ads based off my IP location and the people. It's like, it's actually so like people do assume that we don't need to go down this rabbit hole. People assume like, yes, all the phones are listening to me for ads, but like what people haven't fully clicked in on is they don't even need the sound to track and
Yeah.
target people in your life as well as they
Everything
do.
else they do is it's so much more. Everyone's like, they're all listening. I'm like, listen, maybe, but what they are definitely doing is creepier and more effective. So, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the rabbit hole or the direction you're going to take this, which is that I've known all this for a long time, but that information wasn't what would actually motivate me to not use it.
Yeah, because I think the trick is that it still makes you feel like you have the power.
Mm.
You feel in control the whole time. And this is what this line from Social Dilemma, like, because I didn't watch it for the longest time because like I don't need to see this. I already know, and I'm aware of the effects it has on me personally, and just input on social media platforms. Like I'm aware of that toxicity, and I feel like I'm in a dance with it, and it's fine. But the line that really helped me like grasp some of this stuff better is it's not the data that they're collecting on you that they're selling. So it's not like, you know, the Alphabet company, all the tracking that they're doing of you, they're not selling just the tracking. What they're selling is the ability to change your behavior.
Right. Right. That's why they want the information.
That's why they want the information.
Is so
Behavior
that they
change.
can change the information. And it is, but the thing is for me, knowing that information didn't help me. I watched it and I was like, yep, that's what I thought it would be. It confirms all the things that I'm grossed out by and that I don't like. And then I'm like, okay, what's next to watch? Or it's like, oh, wow, this was really impactful. Better go to Twitter to talk about it. Right. Or like better make an Instagram story talking about it. Like be functionally completely counterproductive to that learning to then jump back into that landscape where I know I'll just get sucked in for hours on end.
And it's this weird thing of like, what do you do with a tool that has legitimate benefits that then crosses a threshold of no longer being a tool, but also an addiction? Like how do you, that distinction there is really tough because like the reason to keep a phone, in my opinion, is, oh, the pocket camera, oh, the social media apps that help me connect with the ways that I make my living. So it feels important. It's a tool. But I mean, when's the last time that your hammer called out to you to use it when you didn't have a nail to hit?
It's like if your hammer came to bed with you and your hammer was like, just let me smash you in the head just for a while. And you just lay in bed and just hit yourself over and over. That's what using a phone when you don't want to be, but can't stop using it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where does the line between it being just a tool stop if it's like screaming for you to pick it up when you haven't decided that you need it?
Mm-hmm. So as somebody who has not been using their phone or most technologies after 9 p.m., there's a few things that I can say with full expert confidence.
Does that make you feel better than everyone else? Like, I'm just curious. Like, do you like definitely walk around during the day and go, listeners, I'm better than you?
Yeah, definitely. For sure. No, but it does. What's funny is I've had friends that have been doing this for a while, and a little bit I felt like that's what they were saying. Like a little bit it felt like, I'm like, yeah, cool. Good for you. But there's two things that clicked for me. One was when my friend articulated, especially being off your phone, which is that is different than just watching Netflix or something, which is that your phone with social media in particular, it asks of you. You aren't just consuming, but it's like, give your input. What's your opinion on this? Right? Like, especially with apps like Twitter and stuff like that. And they're so much heavier with the amount of decision making. Like, I'm going to go to this app. I'm going to go to that. You're much more using your brain. It's much, even though it feels mindless because you're in it, your brain, I think, I would guess, is working a lot harder than just, hey, there's a movie we chose to watch. We're going to sit down and watch it. So even the nights, if I let myself watch a movie with friends or whatever, or my wife and our housemate right now, I still transition into sleep so much easier than if I were on my phone for that time. But what made it click for me was actually one of those How to ADHD YouTube videos where she was talking about transition times. And I truly did not understand that transition times for people with ADHD or all sorts of neurodivergence is harder and slower. And I've always known this, if I'm working late, it takes me a while from the time I leave work to the time I get home to turn my brain out of work mode, to have it stop thinking about the edits, stop thinking about emails, all the people that need things from me. But I didn't realize that struggle to transition from one aspect of my life to another. Well, I didn't realize it had anything to do with ADHD, and I didn't realize how pervasive it was into other aspects of my life. So when I discovered that the reason that it would benefit me personally to be off my phone after 9 wasn't because of data mining. It wasn't because everyone's watching me. It was because my brain just needs more time to get ready to go into sleep. If I suddenly just like turn it off and I go, hey, it's sleep time now. Like my wife, she can literally go, hey, watch, I'm going to fall asleep. Just watch me fall asleep. And she torments me. She doesn't actually, but like, it's like almost a mockery because she can lay down and be like, okay, brain, off now. And she can go to sleep with it almost without exception. She's obviously struggled from time to time. Whereas I'm just learning that the rhythms that I need involve me thinking ahead, saying, hey, sleep is coming later. And this now. It takes time for you to transition into sleep mode. So what are some things sober-minded you, like sober as in not chasing the dopamine, can do? And one of them has just been, don't be on a screen. Read a book, go outside, whatever. Do anything, do dishes, just do things around the house. Pretend it's the 1800s. You just don't have tech. Has been massively helpful, and it's been working for about a week. So I know
you're now the expert.
that I'm a changed man.
I joke it's the 1/3 rule, where these really good things that we stumble into and realize the impact it has, I maybe do them about 1/3 of the time. And I'm soaking in what you're saying here. I'm like, man, I agree with you. And yet 2/3 of the time, the phone will come into the bedroom with me. And as I'm like trying to transition into the evening, I'll just go, I'll just check some stuff.
Yep. Just a few things, just a little bit.
And without fail, that's a 3-hour window now before I can fall asleep.
Yep.
That's it on average, where I'll spend 30 minutes reading Twitter. Maybe that's generous. I'll go through the things. I'll go through the different apps, and then I'll land on one that is working for that period of time. TikTok has delivered a lot of dopamine lately because it gives that spark of discovery of, hey, this is an interesting thing. We could do a whole, oh my gosh. And
we should do a thing on TikTok at some point.
You did a whole video, which was great. And then from the time that I click the phone then off, it's still going to be 45 minutes from that phone clicking off to actually sleeping. And yeah, it's trippy that I've tried little tricks throughout the years of like putting a little wireless charging pad outside, like just make sure there's no charger near the bed, and leave it out in the hallway and those kinds of things. And even when it makes me feel so embarrassed to like say out loud, but yeah, even when I make great preemptive decisions, if I don't have the willpower at the end of the day and I'm tired, like it is such an easy way to get to numb out with noise. It's so easy.
Yep, absolutely. And especially, if you have a chaotic day or a stressful life, at the end of the day, there's almost nothing better to just numb that like awareness of everything. Yeah. And it's so counterintuitive, like to numb the awareness of everything with a device that gives you an awareness of everything. But especially with, the TikTok rabbit hole is wild because it's like a drug in the sense that if you're stressed about everything, you can just like scroll, right? Takes away your decision fatigue. So you're not wondering, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? What do I have to check next? You just roll the dice. It's that slot machine. What's going to be next? Just absolute perfect dopamine machine. But it only really feels good in the moment. I mean, I don't want to say that. It doesn't only feel good in the moment, because I've learned so much and actually discovered new things that I just wouldn't. And like, I've discovered really cool creators, all sorts of things. However,
tell me the one unconscious life practice that has now become a standard in your life.
What is that from? Is that, I mean, Alan Watts or something?
No, that's one of the sound bites. I'm not doing the accent right, but one of the girls with the question that went viral of like,
yes,
tell me that unconscious life hack that has now become standard practice in your life.
Yeah, okay, yes. Those. That I do know. But I've just discovered, if the benefits for me of TikTok, if I truly value them and I want them, I just need to be like, I'll use it in the daytime. I'm going to have to start finding a time where I'm okay to use it. And I mean, and this applies like with that 1/3 rule, just learning to be okay with the fact that I'll probably not find any sort of practice or behavior or life hack that I'm going to stick to every day forever. Mm-hmm. And I'm just starting to just now come to the like acceptance that probably life for me will involve getting excited about a new behavioral hack and doing it for a while until the novelty wears off, and then completely throwing it away, going back to my old habits until some sort of newer habit either feels new or that old one calls to me for how good and effective it was. For a long time, it was almost like, it was really demotivating, because, you know, I'd buy a journal, like a life planning journal, and I'd use it for a little while. I'm like, this is working. Then I put it down. So it's like, at the end of it, I'm not left with, wow, that was really helpful for 2 weeks. At the end of it, I'm left with, hey, I guess you were right. You just aren't able to stick to things, right? Mm-hmm. It's that this is just who you are. You've done it again. You've put down the thing that you said you would pick up. But now that I'm learning much more about myself and about the condition of my existence, I feel much more at peace with saying, this tool is working for me right now. So let's like milk it for all it's worth. And if I put it down, that's totally okay, because it'll be waiting for me when I'm ready to pick it up again, or some other thing will take its place or be ready for me. I don't need to just assume that 3/3 of the time I'll be in my to-do list. 3/3 of the time I'll be off my phone after 9. Because that's like the expectations were just set too high, and they're self-imposed expectations.
Oh man, Jesse. Yeah. I resonate with that quite deeply. And I think people listening do as well. It's like, and it's such a mental trap of how we talk to ourselves to like, I mean, again, we forget that we're human beings. It's like, we're not human doings. Yeah. You know, we aren't machines. There's a beauty to the ebb and flow of process. And that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know where that and's not going anywhere in particular besides just, no, I think that not, because I mean, and this helped me realize that it's like, okay, so I can't do the same things that it seems other people around me are able to do. And that can be frustrating. It can be like, oh, so-and-so does such a good job remembering stuff. Like, wow, I'm jealous of that. And then something clicked for me where I realized like the people in my life that I know that are really good at remembering things and staying organized, they even more so press into some of the tools like day planners, to-do lists. Even the people who, what I would say by default seem to be the kind of people that are more organized, are also that much dependent on tools to help them like catalog their thoughts and stay organized. So then how much more then is it okay for someone who's even less organized, even less aware of time, even less capable of doing one thing at a time? Because you're right, there's that little sense of it can be a little humbling and embarrassing when it's like, oh, why am I not doing this all the time? Or like, why do I forget? And it's like, it's okay to what I guess the realization was, hey, if even the most organized people in my life really depend on these tools, it's okay for me to admit that when I'm using them and it's working, it really, 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 really does help. And I don't need to hate myself when I forget to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. It is. I've never really thought about that. Like, as I do have so many friends that are just really good at being organized and on top of things. And I've never actually made the connection that they almost all rely on those sort of techniques. I think for me, the sadness always came from like trying and failing to rely on those things, right? It trying to be the person that like writes things down or uses a calendar or doesn't forget time or whatever those life hacks are, wake up at 6 with a cold ice bath. But for me, the freeing thing hasn't been that there's a technique that works for me. The freedom has come from knowing that I might not latch onto these things the way other people do. And it's not a personality flaw. It's not because it's not for a lack of trying, right?
Yeah.
If I put in the same effort towards keeping a habit as some of my friends that are more prone towards that, I'm not going to get the same results, right? But then when I'm judging my own success as a creative, like how much I'm getting done against others, like I'm doing the same amount of work, I'm trying to do the same amount of work. I really am giving it 100, but I'm putting out 40.
Yeah.
For a long time, being stuck with this idea that it's like, well, I guess that's just who I am. And what's weird with discovering all this stuff lately about like my own ADHD is that it is just me, yet it feels removed from me. Right. In the same way that if I was missing a foot, I wouldn't yell at myself that I wasn't a good runner. I wouldn't be like, just run faster. Right. Because like, yeah, obviously there's parts of me that are missing. Right. And so learning like, oh, I have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, right? That just is what it is. I didn't choose it, and no amount of willpower is going to make that go away. But understanding that, I can go like, okay, I can almost reframe the techniques in ways that will help me to, I mean, we could say gamify, but in ways that'll help it to work better for me now that I understand myself.
I think even a language thing on what you just said there about underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. I would even say like, no, I would probably be inclined to say, oh, hey, Jesse, don't worry about using the word underdeveloped. I would say, hey, didn't develop in the way that societal structure currently rewards the most.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like that's the pushback against the attention deficit disorder, like the disorder word, and coming to the realization that you might not have a typical brain usually comes at the cost of a life story that is wrought with distress. And that is the disorder component, like the things that enter your life when they transition from just being things that you do to being a disorder thing is like where it's causing you harm. Like I'm not sure my wife studied psychology. I didn't. She knows the term because like when that disorder word gets attached to things. And so that can feel frustrating when even the word to describe the ways that we think differently than a typical brain, it's like that word is literally disorder, but the outcome of that, not the outcome of that brain style in our current world can have disorderly effects. But in and of itself, there's always so much, there's a lot of really good things with it too. So it's like this interesting headspace of self-talk all the time, where the measuring stick of how am I doing? Like, I mean, you asked me like, how are you doing? And I'm like, my measuring stick for that was, I'm excited to be alive. And in previous chapters in the ebbs and flow of a year, that measuring stick is different things. It's, oh, hey, is my video output up? Is the income generated good? Am I being a good husband? And it's nice to have a feeling so tangible lately of, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm excited to be awake for a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad when that's missing from a day. And that measuring stick is a great one for me. It's like, hey, I'm living my life in a way right now where waking up in the morning, I'm not beating myself up before I've even started. And that makes the day more and it's like, wow, this is a version of me that I enjoy living so much better. And I'm soaking it up well. I'm experiencing it in a way that feels effortless. And this is so enjoyable.
Yeah, I love that language of like changing the measuring stick, because I mean, because comparison is like, what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy. Who knows? Sure feels true if that's the expression. But when you're using that measuring stick against whether it's like societal expectations or even like your closest friends and family, learning to understand that like you don't necessarily have the same capacity or just function in the same way. And so using a shared measuring stick is almost irrelevant, right? It's like we're not built to go the same way or the same pace or the same direction. And when you can start to like reframe that measuring stick in a way that actually works for you, it's so much healthier.
A question that I have on the measuring stick thing, and let me know what you think about this either way. Personally, for me, I haven't, especially as I've gotten older, I can't turn off the ways that society has baked in the measuring sticks of like traditional success. Like those are, I can't unwrite that from my upbringing of like, they have told me this way of being is good. So I can't get rid of those. But as far as like my self-talk, like the active conversation I have with myself, it's not as common for that self-talk to be, oh, why can't you be more like them? So it's like, hey, here's this person, they're being super good at accounting. My brain doesn't normally talk to itself where it's like, why aren't you more like that? Because I've like kind of approached this point of self-acceptance where I do value who I am. Where I run into measurement stick stuff where like specifically talking about the internal conversation is me versus the version of myself I wish I was.
Mm-hmm.
Does that click with you?
Well, in both positive and negative ways, because I do love the idea of trying to like live a life outside of that like comparison of others and try to, compare myself more against myself. The problem is when you have an unrealistic expectation of yourself. It's no more helpful to compare yourself against you if the you you're comparing yourself against is a you that's built off of those other societal understandings of what success should look like. So
literally an impossible version of you.
An impossible version of you. So I think part of what's been so exciting for me, and I mean, to answer my own question of how are you doing lately, I would give it the same answer as you, and only over like the last month or so. And a lot of that has come down to starting to understand myself in a way that I just never have, in a way that in my 30s feels very surprising because it feels like it should have happened already. But the more I understand myself, the better I can create that image of myself to compare myself to. So it doesn't have to be rooted in this idea of what societal success looks like or typical success looks like. I can start to now build an idealized version of me off of the reality of who I actually am. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, especially as we continue to have conversations on this topic and proceed into the deeper years of our young adulthood. That's a trippy way to say that. As we become as we become adults, I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. I do wonder how to do that well, because I would say that internal conversation about the better version of me I want to become, that does, I don't know that balance of that bringing out, like, what is the balance of how much good fruit that bears versus how much that hurts me. Because I mean, we talked about it at the end of the year, but like my internal conversation with myself is probably the most toxic.
Yeah.
Like my own expectations, my own desire. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with all this stupid ambition I have, coupled with my inability to follow through with it on the way that I feel I'm supposed to be able to? It's like those two things right side by side is just like, since I was 13, have been the thing I've been trying to solve.
Yeah.
Like so much so that discipline to me was the virtue. It's like, if only I can unlock the key to discipline, that will solve literally everything. And I don't now undervalue discipline because I still hold it as a very high virtue, but my journey towards more discipline has been not as straightforward as I would have thought, realizing that discipline being a great virtue, the realization of that as being like an honorable value or virtue or skill, like the realization that that skill is incredible came so early in my life, and yet my inability to cultivate it is infuriating.
So where are you at in terms of that now?
Well, this is that dance, right? It's like, I'm always aware that there's a version of me that could be more disciplined, that could have more structure in the way that I go about my relationships, my making, my life. And so that awareness is what then tells me, hey, there's a higher state of excellence that I can be doing things at. But then it's that awareness that then measures my current state of not being that against itself in this self-bouncing thing. And so I don't, yeah. And it always frustrated me as a kid when adults would tell me, oh, don't worry that you can't do that thing because like others can't. It's like, no, you don't, like, I'm not actually worried about other right now. I'm actually just aware in myself that I would like to do more. And it made me so annoyed, and well-meaning people would be like, oh, you like, don't stress yourself. Like you're already doing enough. And it's like, I'm so glad I didn't listen to them and stop there, because they would say that for every stage of thing that I've tried to do. And they've been
whenever it got difficult.
Yeah. And pushing through that difficult barrier has brought about some of the biggest reward. And so it's and okay, so then maybe that is life. It's like the state of recharging yourself, developing healthy self-talk and rhythms to get yourself to a state of like healthiness. So that way, when you're face to face with that better version of yourself you want to become, you have the energy to do it, and you're not already so beat down that you don't have enough to even try. So like maybe that is just like the flow of life then across the next, when we're 50 years old, having a similar conversation of like, wow, I'm just learning now this, like it, when we're having those conversations, then like the energy to go about pursuing that thing. Oh man, it's fascinating to stumble into such an existential.
I see exactly where you are in your brain right now. It's a fun, because you're like, I actually have to think this through for a while. It's big.
It's real big. And it's having things in your life that you want to do well, of like, be a great father, be a great husband, be a great creative, be a great advocate for others, and be someone that like is actively making the world better. Like, be all these things that we value. The impression of being able to do all those things as a being at once is less. I'm starting to realize that doing all those things equally well, that would be what my brain would have previously imagined as like balance.
Yeah.
And I think the pursuit of balance is fine, but in reality, that pursuit ends up looking like intense focus on different ones of those areas at different times. So in the aggregate over a year, that might look like but like down on the ground, each week that you're living is going to have an emphasis on one of them. And embracing that is, I think, the key to like being able to be more okay with who you are.
Right. So it's like you're putting, like, for seasons, you're, I mean, I don't want to say putting down or putting away. Let's say you're emphasizing like the fatherly aspect of that character, like the thing that's part of who you want to be. That might, for 6 months, for however long, be the most important metric that you're focused on. And just because there'll be times where like later it's whatever the videos you're working on or something, doesn't mean you put the other one away. But it's almost like you're like, okay, I don't need to be pursuing continued growth at every second. I mean, it also sounds bad to be like, you don't always have to try to be a better father. But the expectation that you'll be growing and growing exponentially in all areas at once is so unbelievably unsustainable.
Oh yeah.
Right. My goal for myself that I have set subconsciously has both been like, I want to be making more videos and better videos at the same time. And that's on top of like also trying to be the better family person, also trying to be the better community person, like all those other things. Right. And if I even just think about trying to make better and more videos simultaneously, if I really stop and think about it, I'm like, oh, that's actually probably not all that possible right now. Right. I like to think back to when I started running. I could only, and this is probably true for everyone, focus on either like running further or faster. You can't go further and faster at the same time. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't want to know you alien. Right. But there are just times in your life where you're like, the goal right now is distance. It's not speed. And then sometimes the goal is going to be speed, or it's going to be quality, or it's going to be whatever. But I don't know. I'm not even sure I even know what we're talking about at this point.
At the end of each month, I mean, both of us, we have obligations and deadlines, and it's an objective statement to go, we are not doing a great job at quality time with members and relationships of our life in that deadline window. That is just an objective thing. That is not us at our best in relationships. Yep. But once that week is over, hey, the first week of the new month, guess what?
Oh yeah. Ultimate dad, ultimate husband, ultimate friend.
And personally, I like that. I mean, it's the reason why the monotonous rhythm of a 9 to 5 I've pushed back against since I was like, needing to go to school was one of the most infuriating things in my life because of the way it was monotonous and the same. I couldn't stand it. And so here was 13-year-old me lashing out and doing weird things at school because I needed something to change. And by not conforming and putting on bright blue skinny jeans, that was like my way of doing it and just making it different because I wanted change. And so like what a gift it is that a life can be sculpted where it's okay to become laser focused on a deadline, kick things up a notch, finish it, and then also have the flexibility over a schedule to go, hey, this first week of a month, I want to prioritize family. And where it gets broken is where if you push yourself right to the limit on the deadline where you've actually now damaged your ability to recharge, then it's going to take even longer before you then can show up for relationships in a way that's actually participating equally as good in those things as you had just been. And so like when we're flying too close to the sun on these things, that's like the introduction of burnout just really makes itself present, where we can't activity switch from our week to week well. And then that's where all of life just starts to settle in like a dark cloud of haze, and the meaning gets very blurry. And
those are the days when you're like, I can't wait for today to be over. You wake up feeling like it just, will it end already? And it's not a suicidal ideation thing.
No.
Though, I mean, I'm sure we could talk about that at another point, but it's a different feeling of just, I know I said I wasn't ready to talk about Bo Burnham's Inside yet, but when he makes that joke, it's like, if I could just turn it off for a year, right? That's what that fog feels like. It's like, could I just like sleep for a few months, right? Just like, because this period is too much. Yeah, I'm glad you're pulling out of that.
It's interesting because we hadn't talked about sleep being a priority leading up to this conversation, but I've enjoyed going back and forth on it, especially because I think some of these questions around it, like we objectively know, hey, sleep is good. And we just go about our life knowing that. And the times where we're not in a good sleep rhythm, and people are telling us, oh, sleep is better. It's like, it almost always necessitates arriving at that on your own. And that can be facilitated by learning things and listening to books and listening to experts. Like that can be helped, but ultimately you've got to arrive at it on your own. And I'm glad that you mentioned this past week, you've been focusing on the tech out of the room. That's something that I've been trying as well. We didn't plan this. I've had a stack of books next to my bed that I haven't been reading because it's always easier. Like, oh, I don't want to turn my lamp on and annoy my wife. It's always been easier for me to sit on my phone in bed than it is books. So what I've pulled out a Kindle that I haven't been using in a while, and I've been trying to read like fantasy novels in the evening instead of like the typical books that I enjoy reading, the nonfiction books that I enjoy reading for learning. If I read those in the evening, my brain just fires right up.
It turns on. Yeah. That's one thing
I've been doing that is the reading book in the evening. And I'm 3 days in, not a week like you. I'm not an expert yet.
Right. You're a pro, but not an expert.
And that has made a noticeable impact. And part of me in my little conversation with myself goes like, let's keep this up. Like, let's not just have this be 2 weeks out of the next 3 months. Let's do this for the long haul. And maybe this can be your evening rhythm that you just do. And that would be great.
It was about 2 years ago that I had never really read fiction. I'd only read nonfiction because like you, I was always in the like, if I could just figure out this like time management, life management stuff, if I could figure that out, everything would be solved. And so I was just constantly reading, those kind of like fix your life, whatever kind of books. But those are no good before bed really, because they light you up. But when I first read the Harry Potter series, I would read them before bed. I had the greatest time. It was like my life was exponentially better, and not necessarily because of the book, but I slept better. I went to sleep easier. And going into fantasy helped me prepare for sleep far better than going into like whatever, how to read more books book. I just made that book up. Speaking of reading though, I am curious to know if you would try this. So I heard someone saying something to try, especially if you have trouble staying on track reading, is to read the physical book while you listen to the audiobook, and then just get the audiobook and like on Audible, I'm pretty sure you can speed up the tempo of it, and you just speed it up to like what your internal dialogue is, so that you just like listen while reading. And I haven't tried it yet, but I'm so excited to, because I've never been able to stick with audiobooks because I get distracted visually very easily. Yeah. But then also with books, I can also drift pretty easily as well. So I'm curious to see what engaging more of my sentences for reading would feel like. So I'm going to give that a shot in the near future. I'll write that on my to-do list soon, and I'll let you know how that goes.
I like that idea. Amazon has the whisper sync between Kindle and audiobook where it'll like save your place in either.
Oh, that's really cool.
So I mean, I'm one of those people that throughout the day I have audio going in my ears often when I'm doing tactile things, because it helps me just stay on the tactile thing. It's weird. But one of the book series that I've been listening to, that's what prompted me to like, oh, I should read this in the evening again, was just remembering, oh, hey, I could probably get this on my Kindle, and then it syncs between the audio. Because I mean, I love listening to audiobooks. It's changed I was about to just wax poetic about how it's changed my life, which it has, but that ability to then merge in I would love to try that technique you just described.
Mm-hmm.
Some fantasy stuff that I'd recommend: the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. If someone listening is looking for a new trilogy, it's fantasy, but it's like fantasy because there's a wizard, and it's more like medieval barbarian style storytelling, and it's got a big emphasis on characters, and it's simply incredible. Ready Player One is also, and Ender's Game is another one that is like, you could finish Ender's Game in an evening, but there's like tons of books that are in that world. And so if you're wondering what to start with in a fiction world, I would recommend those. Do you have recommendations?
Here's what I know. Donna got me to get some book in a series also about magic, and something about wind. Does that sound familiar?
It's not clicking for me, but wind.
I lost the book, and it's been frustrating me lately, especially in this like no phones after 9 time. So I'm like, I want that book. I want to read it.
Right.
And I haven't been able to, but I did recently pick up this book by Alan Fletcher. It was like an art textbook, but it went out of print in 2011. It's called The Art of Looking Sideways. And it is so cool. It's a large book, but what's interesting is that there's no beginning or end. You can pick it up at any page. And the whole book is like, it's a real play on design and like language and stuff. So it's like mixed with like conversations on art and tool and creation, but all played within like different fonts and layout structures and like it is a gorgeous book. I scoured eBay. Is it like eBay.
Coffee table size?
You wouldn't want to bring it in your backpack everywhere you go. And you've got to read it literally sideways. A lot of the time there's like the writings all over the place. But I would recommend that in a heartbeat, except I had to scour eBay for months, and like I was bidding on these books constantly, and they would go for like $300 or $400. And so obviously I'd bow out. Until one day I was just like randomly searching. I saw one that was like $80, and I was like, okay, this is like an okay place to start bidding. And then I clicked a bid, and it's like, buy it now. And I said, wait, what? Really? So I just clicked it, and it was like, hey, your orders, you placed it. So, just a word, if you're looking for the book online, it's kind of a pain, but I would suggest if you get your hands on one, it's very cool. Or even just look it up. It's unlike anything I've read.
Let's close with this question here, and I'm curious what your response will be. Do you think it's better to binge so hard on the tech that you're forced to confront the massive negative impact quicker, or slowly let the atrophy wear you out over a period of months?
Binge.
Yeah.
I think the answer for me is binge. And part of that is I know that long-term habits create like deeper grooves of like patterns in my life. Mm-hmm. Versus something I do a lot of in the short term. So, I mean, that's also my personality. I just get really into things. Yeah. And then I get really, really into it. And so that includes negative, habits and whatnot. But I find if I haven't been in it too long, it's much easier to break that cycle than something that I develop over time.
And the interesting flip side of that is then trying to binge on the good thing and then wearing yourself out on the good thing too, where it's like, oh, I'm having so much fun reading in the evening. And then now I'm reading for 3 hours every night, and it's too much. I do that with running all the time, where like, oh, I like running again now. And now I'm running for 2 hours a day, and I'm way too tired to do anything else because I don't have the, but
I do the same thing.
We must be similar. We should start a podcast. I'm on board with the like, hey, the quicker that you can hit rock bottom in a non-destructive of your life way with a habit, like I would way prefer eating the whole pizza, get sick to my stomach, and not eat pizza for a while, than slowly introduce 2 slices of pizza into my lunch every day. And after 3 months, now that's like my rhythm.
Right. Be like, wow, I'm slow and groggy. What happened? And then you've got to like look and figure out all the changes over the last year.
Yes.
Be like, no, when I eat a whole pizza and I go, my stomach hurts. Do you think it's that whole pizza I just ate? Yes.
Where do people go? Jesse Driftwood1 on Twitter.
Yeah. JDRW on TikTok.
That's going to be it for this one. Bye.
Bye. Yo, that was all over the map.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Make Stuff Club. We've got a video version of the podcast on YouTube. And the benefit of that, even if you listen to the audio versions, is that we've got highlights that we're going to be uploading there. It's kind of short, bite-sized little nuggets to kind of contribute to your week and your creative journey. Our theme music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. This has been this episode of the podcast, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.